The Great Hall on Nexus Prime had seen many important meetings. Today was different. Elder Counselor Vexstar stood at the center of the massive room. His crystal body caught the light from 100 suns streaming through the dome above. Around him sat representatives from across the galaxy. Some had wings, others had scales, and a few looked like walking plants. But all of them were here for the same reason. The galaxy was changing. Young species were getting bold. They questioned the old ways and the old rules. Today, Vexstar would remind them why some rules existed. "My friends," Vexstar began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We gather today because some of you have forgotten our history. You think the old laws are just stories. You believe they no longer matter." Ambassador Kreldeth of the Hegemony War Clans shifted in his seat. His massive form was covered in black armor, and his red eyes glowed with impatience. He had been pushing for expansion into new territories. There were systems out there with no protection, no defenses. Easy targets for a warrior race like his. "Elder Vexstar speaks of the past," Kreldeth said, standing up. His voice was deep and rough. "The galaxy has moved beyond ancient fears. We are strong now. We have weapons that can destroy stars. Why should we fear shadows and old stories?" A murmur ran through the hall. Many of the younger delegates agreed with Kreldeth. They had never seen real war. They had grown up in a time of peace. The old warnings seemed silly to them. Vexstar. Crystal form grew brighter. He was old, older than most civilizations. He had seen things that would terrify these young fools. "Article 1 of the Galactic Charter," he said slowly. "Do you remember it, Kreldeth?" The Hegemony ambassador waved. A clawed hand, old words on old paper. Something about not bothering some primitive species in a backwater system. "The exact words," Vexstar said, his voice growing cold, "are these: under no circumstances shall any civilized species interfere with, attack, or attempt to subjugate the humans of the Sol System." Several delegates laughed. The Sol System was nothing special. It had one yellow star and a few rocky planets. The species there had barely left their home world. They used chemical rockets and metal ships. Their weapons were simple kinetic devices. They were so primitive they still fought wars with each other. "You laugh," Vexstar said. "Your ancestors did not laugh. They wrote this law with trembling. Appendages. They wrote it in their own blood, some of them." The laughter stopped. Even Kreldeth seemed less sure of himself. Vexstar activated a holographic display. It showed the Sol System as it was now. A small yellow star with 8 planets. The third planet was blue and green, covered in water and life. Small ships moved between the inner planets. There were mining stations and colonies, but nothing that looked dangerous. "They call themselves humans," Vexstar explained. "They are carbon-based, bipedal, and relatively short-lived. They have only been in space for about 100 of their years. They seem harmless. Then why the law?" asked Delegate Mordun from the Peaceful Trade Alliance. Her plant-like form swayed as she spoke. "If they are so weak, why do we need to avoid them?" Vexstar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because 10,000 years ago, their ancestors nearly ended all life in the galaxy." The hall fell silent. No one moved. Even the air seemed to stop flowing. "The records are sealed," Vexstar continued. "Only the council elders know the full truth, but I will tell you what I can. Long ago, there was a species called the Architects. They were not native to the Sol System. They came from somewhere else, somewhere far away. They were builders, creators, and explorers. They gave us mathematics, faster than light travel, and energy weapons. They helped many species reach the stars. The hologram changed. It showed ancient star maps, pictures of impossible machines, and cities that floated in space. The architects were also warriors, Vextar said. When threatened, they did not negotiate. They did not surrender. They fought with a fury that burned across the galaxy. They turned entire star systems into weapons. They created plagues that could kill billions. They built machines that could destroy reality itself, Kreldoth scoffed. Stories and legends. Where are these architects now? If they were so powerful, why did they disappear? They did not disappear, Vextar said. They chose exile. They recognized what they had become. They saw that their nature made them too dangerous to live among other species. So they found a distant world, a blue planet orbiting a yellow star. They went there willingly. They suppressed their own memories. They gave up their technology. They became ... human. The delegates stared at the hologram showing Earth. It looked so peaceful, so innocent. The humans do not remember, Vextar explained. They think they evolved on that world. They believe they are alone in the universe. They live simple lives, fight small wars, and dream of the stars. The architects made sure their descendants would be different, peaceful, limited. But, Delegate Mordon asked, sensing there was more. But they are still architects underneath, Vextar said. The genes are still there. The instincts are still there. The capacity for war beyond imagination is still there. It sleeps, but it does not die. Kreldoth stood up again. His armor clanked as he moved. You want us to fear a species that cannot even leave their own star system? You want us to avoid them because of what their ancestors might have been? I want you to remember history, Vextar replied. Every few thousand years, someone decides to test the humans. Pirates attack their ships. Slavers try to capture them. Each time, we see glimpses of what they really are. Each time, we are reminded why the law exists. What kind of glimpses? Asked a delegate from the back of the hall. Vextar's form dimmed. A human ship was attacked by raiders 2,000 years ago. One human woman, injured and alone, killed 47 pirates with her bare hands. She turned their own ship into a weapon and used it to destroy 3 more raider vessels. When rescue arrived, they found her sitting calmly in the wreckage, treating her wounds. The hall was completely silent now. 500 years ago, a human colony ship went off course and crashed on a death world. The planet was covered in predators, poisonous plants, and deadly weather. 50 humans survived the crash. When we found them 20 years later, they had not only survived, they had taken over the entire planet. They had tamed the predators, turned the poisons into medicine, and built cities that could withstand any storm. Vextar turned to face Kreldoth directly. Do you still think they are harmless? Kreldoth was quiet, but his red eyes still burned with ambition. He was a warrior. He had conquered dozens of worlds. How dangerous could one primitive species really be? As the council session ended, Vextar felt a chill in his crystal heart. He could see it in Kreldoth's eyes. The hegemony war clans would not listen. They would do what warriors always did. They would test their strength against what they saw. As weakness dot far across the galaxy, in the Sol system, Captain Lee Tae-min guided his patrol ship past Jupiter's great red spot. The Sol's pride was small compared to the gas giant, but it was home to him and his crew. Navigator Park Ji-woo plotted their course to Europa Station. Engineer Kim So-ra monitored the fusion engines. Communications officer Choi Dae-ho listened to music from Earth while scanning for asteroids. They were peaceful people living peaceful lives. They had no idea they were being watched. They had no idea that ancient laws protected them. They had no idea that somewhere in the darkness between the stars, Kreldoth's war fleet was already moving toward their home. The oldest rule in the galaxy was about to be broken. and the galaxy would remember why it existed in the first place. The attack came without warning. Kreldith's war fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system like shadows falling across the light. His ships were massive, dark things built for war. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city. He had brought 50 of them. The hegemony commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the small human settlements scattered across the inner planets. Mars had 3 mining colonies. Europa had a research station. Titan had a fuel processing plant. All of them looked so fragile, so easy to break. Begin the assault, Kreldith ordered. Show these primitives the power of the hegemony. His ships moved toward their targets. The plan was simple. Destroy the human colonies quickly and completely. Take prisoners if possible. Show the galaxy that the old laws meant nothing. Prove that humans were just another weak species waiting to be conquered. Captain Lee Tae-min was checking supply reports when the first distress signal came through. He was aboard the Sol's Pride, his small patrol ship, somewhere between Mars and Jupiter. The signal was from Europa Station, and it was not good. "Captain," Communications Officer Choi Dae-ho called out, his face pale. "Europa Station is under attack. Unknown ships, massive firepower. They're requesting immediate assistance." Lee Tae-min felt his blood turn cold. "Set course for Europa, maximum speed. Send out a general alert to all Earth Defense Forces." Navigator Park Ji-woo's hands flew over his controls. "Course laid in, sir. 20 minutes to Europa at full burn." "Make it 15, Lee Tae-min said, but they were already too late for Europa Station. Lieutenant Han Min-seo watched the alien ships approach through the station's main view screen. She had 43 people under her command. Scientists, miners, and a handful of security guards. The aliens had weapons that could crack moons. "All personnel to emergency stations," she announced over the station speakers. "This is not a drill. We are under attack by unknown hostiles." The first alien ship opened fire. Its energy beams cut through space like red lightning. They hit Europa Station's outer ring and tore it apart. Metal screamed and atmosphere vented into space. Emergency lights flashed red throughout the station. Han Min-seo ran through the corridors, helping evacuate civilians to the inner core. The station shook again as more weapons fire hit home. She reached the command center and activated the emergency. "Protocols." "Dr. Yoon," she called to the station's chief scientist. "How long until the evacuation pods are ready?" 5 minutes, Dr. Yoon replied, his hands shaking as he worked the controls. "Maybe less." The station shook again, harder this time. A section of the outer hull collapsed, crushing a hydroponics bay. Han Min-seo realized they were not going to have 5 minutes. "Change of plans," she said. "We're not running." She activated the station's mining lasers. They were not weapons, but they could cut through rock and ice. Maybe they could hurt alien ships too. She turned the communication array into a high-powered transmitter and began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Europa Station to any Earth forces in the area. We are under attack by unknown alien vessels. We will not surrender. We will not yield. If we die today, we die fighting." The aliens were surprised when Europa Station fought back. The mining lasers carved into their shields and hull plating. It was not much damage, but it was more than they expected from a simple research station. Kreldith watched the battle from his flagship. "Why are they fighting?" he asked his tactical officer. "They cannot win. They must know they cannot win." "Unknown, sir," the officer replied. "Their weapons are primitive, but they're using them with remarkable skill." On Europa Station, Han Min-seo coordinated the defense from the command center. She had turned scientists into gunners and miners into soldiers. They held the aliens off for 37 minutes before the station's reactor went critical. "All hands, this is the lieutenant," she broadcast on all channels. "It has been an honor serving with you. Tell Earth we did not go quietly." The explosion lit up Jupiter's sky. It took 3 alien ships with it. Similar scenes played out across the Sol system. On Mars, Chief Engineer Yoon Ji-hai received word that alien ships were approaching her mining colony. She had 60 people to protect and no real weapons. She had fusion reactors, lots of them. "Listen to me," she told her people over the colony's communication system. "These aliens think they can take our home. They think we're weak. They're about to learn different." She began connecting the colonies. Fusion reactors in series. It was dangerous, possibly insane, but it would create the biggest explosion in human history. When the alien ships came close enough, she would trigger it manually. The aliens landed troops first. They expected the humans to surrender when they saw hegemony warriors in full battle armor. Instead, the humans met them with mining equipment, turned into weapons. Plasma cutters became flamethrowers. Industrial mechs became war machines. Yoon Ji-hai watched the battle from the reactor control room. Her people were fighting hard, but they were losing. "Time to end this. Computer, set reactor overload sequence. Manual trigger only. Warning," the computer replied. "This action will result in complete destruction of the facility and surrounding area." "I know," she said quietly. She opened a channel to the colony. "All personnel, this is Chief Engineer Yoon. You have 30 seconds to get as far away as possible. It's been an honor." She pressed the button. The explosion was visible from Earth. It created a new crater on Mars 50 kilometers wide. 7 alien ships were caught in the blast. None of them survived. Captain Lee Tae-min arrived at Europa just in time to see the aftermath. Debris from the station and alien ships floated in Jupiter's gravity well. His crew was silent as they surveyed the destruction. "Sir," Navigator Park Ji-woo said quietly, "I'm reading escape pods. Some of our people got out. Rescue operations." "Begin now," Lee Tae-min ordered. "And send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're at war." But the biggest shock came from Dr. Song Woo-jin on Mars. He was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms. When the attacks began, he took shelter in an underground research facility. After the explosions ended, he emerged to find wreckage from alien ships scattered across the Martian surface. He began examining the debris, looking for clues about their attackers. What he found in the alien computer systems changed everything he thought he knew about humanity. The files were encrypted, but Dr. Song was good at solving puzzles. When he finally broke the code, he found records that went back thousands of years. Records about something called the Architect Wars. Records about a species that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. Records about humans. According to the alien files, humans were not native to Earth. They had been placed there by survivors of an ancient war. They were the descendants of the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever known. The aliens called them the Architects. Dr. Song stared at the data for hours. It told a story of a species that could not be conquered, could not be reasoned with, and could not be stopped. A species that had voluntarily exiled itself to prevent its own destructive nature from consuming the galaxy. The files contained one final warning written in dozens of alien languages. Do not wake the sleepers. Do not remind them what they are. Do not make them remember. But it was too late for warnings. The attacks had already begun. Human colonies were burning. Human lives had been lost. And somewhere in the space between Mars and Jupiter, Captain Lee Tae-min was preparing to do something that had not been done in 10,000 years. He was preparing to take the fight to the aliens. On Nexus Prime, Elder Counselor Vextar received the first reports of the attack on the Sol system. His crystal form went completely dark. Around him, His staff worked frantically to contact Kraldith's fleet. "Sir," his aide reported, "the hegemony forces are not responding to our communications. We're detecting massive energy signatures from the Sol system. It appears combat has begun." Vexstar felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Fear, not for himself, but for the galaxy itself. "Send messages to all council members," he ordered. "Emergency session in 1 hour. And get me a direct line to Kreldoth immediately." But Kreldoth was not taking calls. He was too busy celebrating what he thought was an easy victory. His forces had destroyed several human colonies and killed hundreds of primitive defenders. The humans had fought harder than expected, but they were still just primitives with simple weapons. "Prepare the second wave," he ordered his fleet commanders. "Target their homeworld next. Show them that resistance is futile." What Kreldoth did not understand was that he had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. He had awakened something that had been sleeping for 10,000 years. He had reminded the descendants of the architects what they truly were. And across the Sol system, as news of the attack spread, something ancient and terrible began to stir in human hearts. They felt anger like they had never felt before. They felt a unity that transcended nations and politics. They felt the call of their ancestors echoing across the centuries. The humans were waking up, and the galaxy would never be the same. The change began in Earth's deepest research facilities. Dr. Shin A-Ray had been studying human genetics for 15 years. She thought she understood everything about human DNA. Then the attacks happened, and everything she knew became wrong-dotted. Started with blood samples from the survivors of Europa Station. Their genetic markers were different. Sections of DNA that had been dormant for thousands of years were suddenly active. Ancient genes were turning on, changing the survivors at the cellular level. "This is impossible," Dr. Shin said to her research team. "Human DNA doesn't work this way. These changes should take millions of years, not hours." But the changes were real. The survivors were stronger, faster, and smarter than before. Their reflexes had improved by 300%. Their brain activity had increased dramatically. Most shocking of all, they seemed to understand technology they had never seen before. Lieutenant Han Min-seo, who had survived the destruction of Europa Station, was brought to Dr. Shin's lab for testing. She looked at the advanced medical scanners and immediately knew how they worked. She glanced at the quantum computers and understood their programming language. "How do you know this?" Dr. Shin asked her. Han Min-seo frowned. "I don't know. It just makes sense. Like remembering something I forgot long ago." Similar reports came in from around the world. Humans everywhere were changing. But the biggest changes were happening to those who had been in combat with the aliens. They were evolving faster than anyone thought possible. Admiral Bei Hien-woo stood in the command center of Earth's newest military facility. 6 months ago, he had been in charge of asteroid mining operations. Now he was leading Earth's first real military force. The speed of the transformation amazed even him. "Status report," he ordered his staff. "Sir," replied his aide, Commander Kim Tae-young, "the first wave of new ships will be ready within 48 hours. The design specifications came from the survivors of the alien attacks. Somehow they know exactly what we need to build." The ships being constructed were unlike anything humans had built before. They used principles that human science had never discovered. Faster-than-light drives, energy shields, and weapons that could destroy targets across star systems. The survivors called them remembrance ships, as if they were recalling designs from dreams. Dr. Song Woo-jin, the xenobiologist who had found the alien records on Mars, was brought to Earth to share his discoveries. What he told the military leaders changed everything. "We're not who we think we are," he explained to the assembled commanders. According to these alien records, humans are the descendants of something called the architects. We were placed on Earth 10,000 years ago as a failsafe, a last resort in case the galaxy faced a threat too great for other species to handle. Admiral Bay studied the alien data files. These architects, what happened to them? They recognized that they were too dangerous to live among other species, Dr. Song replied. They had the power to destroy entire star systems, but they also had a nature that made them incredibly violent when threatened. So they chose exile. They suppressed their own memories and abilities, hoping their descendants would be different. But we're not different, Commander Kim observed. The attacks triggered something in us. We're becoming what they were. Dr. Song nodded grimly. The alien files contain one more piece of information. The architects didn't just have advanced technology. They had something the aliens called the rage. When threatened with extinction, they would fight with such fury that they became unstoppable. They would never surrender, never retreat, never give up, no matter how hopeless the situation became. As if to prove his point, reports began coming in from across the Sol system. Human forces were not just defending their colonies anymore. They were attacking. Captain Lee Tae-min had tracked the alien fleet to their staging area near Neptune. His small patrol ship had no chance against 50 alien warships. But he attacked anyway. What happened next defied all military logic. The Sol's pride moved through the alien formation like it was dancing. Lee Tae-min seemed to know exactly where each enemy ship would be before they moved. His weapons found weak points in alien armor that should have been impossible to detect. In 30 minutes, he destroyed 7 alien ships and disabled 12 more. How did you do that? Asked his navigator, Park Ji-woo, who was staring at the tactical display in amazement. I don't know, Lee Tae-min admitted. It just felt right. Like I've done this before. But the real shock came when Lee Tae-min's ship was finally hit. The aliens thought they had won when the human vessel lost power and began drifting. They moved in to capture the survivors. Instead, Lee Tae-min activated the ship's self-destruct system and used it as a weapon. The explosion took out 5 more alien ships. Lee Tae-min and his crew survived by using the escape pods at the last possible second. When rescue ships found them floating near Neptune, they were already planning their next attack. Similar stories came from throughout the system. Human defenders who should have been overwhelmed were winning impossible victories. Mining ships were destroying military vessels. Scientists were building weapons from spare parts. The aliens were facing something they had never encountered before. Kreldoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the casualty reports. He had lost half his fleet in 3 days. The humans were using tactics that made no sense, technology that should not exist, and weapons that violated known physics. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we're detecting new human ships entering the system. Design unknown, capabilities unknown. On the main screen, Kreldoth saw something that chilled his warrior's heart. The human ships looked ancient, as if they had been built thousands of years ago. But they moved with grace and power that his own vessels could not match. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time. The lead human ship opened a communication channel. Admiral Bae Hyun-woo's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm, but his eyes held something that made Kreldoth step backward. I am Admiral Bae Hyun-woo of the Earth Defense Force, the human said. You have attacked our colonies and killed our people. This ends now. Kreldoth tried to regain his composure. Human, you are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Admiral Bae smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You don't understand what you've done. You've awakened something that was sleeping. You've reminded us what we are. The human ships opened fire. Their weapons were unlike anything in the galaxy. They didn't just destroy Kreldith's ships. They made them disappear. One moment a hegemony warship was there. The next moment it was gone, as if it had never existed. Impossible, Kreldoth breathed. What kind of weapons are those? The kind your ancestors feared, Admiral Bay replied. The kind that ended the last galactic war 10,000 years ago. The battle was over in minutes. Kreldoth remaining. Ships tried to retreat, but the human vessels were faster. They chased down the aliens and destroyed them one by one. Only Kreldoth's flagship escaped, and only because Admiral Bay let it go. Return to your leaders, the human admiral said over the communication channel. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them that the humans are no longer hiding. Tell them that the descendants of the architects have awakened. As Kreldoth's ship fled toward hegemony space, the alien commander realized he had made a terrible mistake. He had not conquered a primitive species. He had unleashed something that had been contained for 10,000 years. Back on Earth, Dr. Shin A-Ri continued her research into the human genetic changes. What she found frightened her more than the alien attacks. The humans were not just becoming stronger and smarter. They were becoming something else entirely. The genetic modifications are accelerating, she reported to Admiral Bay. At this rate, within a year, humans will be as advanced as the original architects. Maybe more. So, is that a problem? The Admiral asked. Dr. Shin looked at the data again. I don't know. The alien records suggest the architects chose exile because they were too dangerous to exist alongside other species. If we become like them, then the galaxy will have to adapt, Admiral Bay said simply. We didn't choose this war, but we will finish it. Across the galaxy, other species began to detect the changes in the Sol system. Ancient warning systems, dormant for millennia, suddenly activated. Emergency protocols were triggered on 100 worlds. Species that had never heard of humans began preparing for war. On Nexus Prime, Elder Counselor Vextar received reports that made his crystal form flicker with fear. Human ships had been detected in 17 different star systems. Impossible. Ships using impossible technology. Ships that moved faster than light itself. How many humans are there? Asked Delegate Mordon, her plant-like form trembling. The records say they numbered in the billions when they went into exile, Vextar replied. But that was 10,000 years ago. Who knows how many there are now? The answer came sooner than anyone expected. Long-range sensors detected a massive fleet leaving the Sol system. Hundreds of ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen since the Architect Wars. At the head of the fleet was Admiral Bei Haiyan Wu's flagship, a vessel that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. Its name, written in ancient symbols that made reality bend around him, translated simply as remembrance. The human fleet. The first hegemony world to fall was Kreldor, the military capital of their empire. It should have been impossible to conquer. The planet was protected by orbital battle stations, planetary shields, and 1 million ground troops. None of it mattered. Fleet. Admiral Kang Haiyan-ji led the assault from her flagship, the Inshan Rising. She had been a cargo ship captain 6 months ago. Now she commanded weapons that could reshape reality itself. The transformation still amazed her, but she did not question. Her people were under threat, and she would protect them. Admiral, reported her tactical officer, Commander Chun Minho, hegemony forces are forming defensive positions around the planet. They outnumber us 50-1. Kang Haiyan-ji studied the tactical display. The hegemony had gathered their entire Third Fleet to defend Kreldor. 200 warships, each one designed to kill. In the old days, such odds would have meant certain death for any attacking force. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Begin Phase 1. The human ships moved into attack formation. They did not look like traditional warships. They seemed to be made of condensed starlight and crystallized time. Their hulls shifted and flowed like living metal. When they opened fire, reality itself seemed to tear apart. The hegemony defense platforms were the first to die. They simply ceased to exist, as if they had been edited out of the universe. The orbital battle stations lasted a few seconds longer before they too vanished into nothing. What kind of weapons are those? General Vashkul demanded from the surface of Krelder. He was the planet's military commander, a veteran of a dozen wars. He had never seen anything like this. Unknown, sir, his aide replied, staring at the sensor readings. Our instruments can't identify the energy signatures. It's like they're using physics that don't exist. The human fleet descended toward the planet. The hegemony ships tried to intercept them, but it was like trying to catch ghosts. The human vessels moved through space in ways that violated every law of physics. They were in 3 places at once, then nowhere, then everywhere. Admiral Kang. Hyan-ji watched the battle with calm eyes. Part of her mind was horrified by the destruction she was causing. But another part, a deeper part that had awakened when the hegemony attacked her people, felt only satisfaction. This was justice. This was what happened to those who threatened humanity. Ma'am, Commander Chun reported, enemy fleet is down to 30% strength. They're requesting surrender terms. No terms, Kang Hyan-ji replied. They showed no mercy to our colonies. They will receive none from us. The last hegemony ship died screaming into the void. Krelder lay defenseless below, its million strong. Army waiting for an invasion that would never come. The humans had not come to conquer. They had come to deliver a message. Kang Hyan-ji opened a communication channel to the planet's surface. Her image appeared on every screen across the world. When she spoke, her voice was heard by every living creature on Kreldor. I am Fleet Admiral Kang Hyan-ji of the Human Defense Force, she said. Your leaders attacked our people. They killed our families. They broke the oldest law in the galaxy. This is the consequence. She raised her hand, and the human fleet focused their weapons on empty space above the planet. What happened next would be talked about in whispers for 1,000 years. The humans created a new star. They pulled matter and energy from dimensions that existed beyond normal space. They compressed it, shaped it, and ignited it with forces that predated the universe itself. A small sun blazed to life above Kreldor, bathing the planet in new light. This star will burn for exactly 1,000 years, Admiral Kang announced. It will serve as a reminder of what happens to those who harm humanity. Your world is spared, but your fleet is gone. Your military is broken. Tell your leaders that this is only the beginning. The human fleet departed, leaving behind a civilization in shock. The new star burned bright and clean above Kreldor, a constant reminder of human power. Similar scenes played out across hegemony space. World after world fell to human forces. But the humans did not occupy these planets. They did not enslave the populations. They simply destroyed the military forces and moved on. Their message was always the same. This is what happens when you threaten humanity. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from across the galaxy, all of them terrified. The humans were not just winning the war against the hegemony. They were rewriting the rules of warfare itself. Elder Counselor Vextar stood at the center of the chamber, his crystal form dim with exhaustion. He had been awake for 72 hours, coordinating the galaxy's response to the human awakening. Nothing was working. The situation is worse than we feared, he announced to the assembled delegates. Human forces have been detected in 43 star systems. They're not just attacking hegemony worlds. They're appearing everywhere, watching, waiting. Delegate Mordoon's plant-like form swayed with nervousness. What do they want? Justice, Vextar replied. According to the ancient records, the architects had a concept they called absolute justice. When wronged, they would not stop until the wrong was made right. They would pursue their enemies across the galaxy if necessary. Can we negotiate? With them? Asked Ambassador Trilix from the Mercantile Confederation. Unknown, Vextar said. The old records suggest the architects could be reasoned with, but only after their enemies were completely defeated. Until then, they are implacable. As if summoned by his words, the chamber's main screen activated. The image that appeared made every delegate fall silent. It showed a human woman standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a starship. She was young, perhaps 30 standard years, with dark hair and calm eyes. But there was something about her that radiated power. I am Dr. Park Yoonji, speaking for the Human Defense Force, she said. Her voice was clear and steady. We understand you wish to communicate with us. Vextar stepped forward. Dr. Park, I am Elder Counselor Vextar of the Galactic Council. We are pleased to make contact with your people. Are you? Dr. Park asked. Your records show that the galaxy has known about humanity for 10,000 years. You have watched us, studied us, and ignored us. Why do you wish to communicate now? The question hung in the air like a blade. Every delegate knew the answer. They wanted to communicate because they were afraid. Your people have been attacked, Vextar said carefully. We wish to express our condolences and offer assistance. Dr. Park's expression did not change. The attack on our people was carried out by the Hegemony war clans. According to our intelligence, the Hegemony is a member of this council. You knew of their plans and did nothing to stop them. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some delegates protested, but their voices were weak. The truth was that many of them had known Kreldoth was planning something. They had chosen to look the other way. The Hegemony acted without council approval, Vextar said. Their actions were condemned by the majority of civilized species. Condemned but not prevented, Dr. Park replied. Your condemnation means nothing to the families of those who died on Europa Station, Mars Colony, and Titan Base. General Lim Jae-soon appeared beside Dr. Park on the screen. He was older, with gray hair and scars from recent battles. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The Hegemony war clans will be dissolved, he announced. Their military leaders will face human justice. Their weapons will be destroyed. Their conquered territories will be liberated. This is not a negotiation. This is an ultimatum. And if we refuse? Asked a delegate from the back of the chamber. General Lim smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You are welcome to try. The screen went dark, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. For the first time in galactic history, a species had dictated terms to the Galactic Council, and everyone knew they had the power to enforce those terms. Over the following weeks, human forces systematically dismantled the Hegemony war clans. Their military was not just defeated, it was erased. Hegemony warships were found floating in space, their crews gone, their weapons disabled. Entire military installations simply disappeared overnight, but the humans did more than destroy. They liberated worlds that had been under Hegemony control for centuries. They freed slave populations and provided medical aid to species that had been oppressed. They shared technology that ended famines and cured diseases. The galaxy watched in amazement as the humans demonstrated something unprecedented, the power to destroy everything, combined with the wisdom to build something better. Kreldoth himself was captured while trying to flee to the Outer Rim. He was brought before a human tribunal on a ship that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. When he saw Admiral Bei Haiyan Wu again, The alien warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds began to shake. "You cannot defeat the entire galaxy," Kreldoth said, trying to sound defiant. "We are billions of species, trillions of beings. You are just one world." Admiral Bay studied the alien commander with eyes that seemed to see through time itself. "We are not just one world," he said quietly. "We are the children of the architects. We are the inheritors of the galaxy's first civilization, and we have awakened." He gestured to the view screen, which showed the human fleet spread across a dozen star systems. Every human ship you see carries the knowledge of 10,000 years. 6 months after the first attack on Europa Station, the galaxy was a different place. The hegemony war clans no longer existed. Their military had been dissolved, their leaders imprisoned, and their conquered worlds set free. But the changes went far deeper than anyone had expected. President Yi Su-jin stood before the rebuilt Galactic Council on Nexus Prime. She had been a university professor before the war, teaching ancient history to students who thought the past was boring. Now she was humanity's first representative to galactic civilization, and the past had become very relevant indeed. The new council chamber was different from the old one. Where before there had been a circular arrangement that suggested equality, now there was a clear hierarchy. The human delegation occupied the central position, not because they had demanded it, but because every other species had insisted on it. Fear and respect had combined to create something unprecedented: voluntary submission to human authority. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," President Yi began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber, "we gather today to establish new principles for galactic civilization. The old ways failed. They allowed aggression to flourish and innocence to suffer. That ends now." Elder Counselor Vextar, his crystal form now glowing with renewed purpose, stood to address the human representative. "President Yi, the Council, recognizes humanity's right to leadership. Your people have demonstrated both the power to enforce justice and the wisdom to show mercy. We submit to human guidance in the hope of creating a better galaxy." The words would have been unthinkable a year ago. An elder species submitting to what they had considered primitives. But the galaxy had learned that humans were not primitive. They were the descendants of the architects, and their awakening had changed everything. Admiral Jang Tae-ho commanded the largest fleet in galactic history from his flagship, the Soul's Honor. His ships patrolled the major trade routes, not as conquerors, but as protectors. Pirates had virtually disappeared from known space. Slavers had found their operations impossible to maintain. Warlords who had terrorized entire sectors for centuries had simply vanished. "Admiral," reported his aide, Commander Lee Young-soo, "we're receiving requests for protection from 47 different species. They want to establish human protectorates in their territories." Admiral Jang studied the requests. They came from all across the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humans 6 months ago were now begging for their protection. The power humanity had displayed during the hegemony war had shown the galaxy what true security looked like. Approve them all, he decided, but make sure they understand the terms. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We do not rule them. It was a crucial distinction. The humans had learned from the mistakes of their ancestors. The original architects had been too aggressive, too willing to impose their will on others. This new generation of humans would be different. They would use their power to protect, not to dominate. Dr. Kwon Minho stood in the medical facility on the former hegemony world of Vashtaran. 6 months ago, this planet had been a military stronghold where the weak were used as slave labor. Now it was a center of healing and learning. Human medical technology had ended diseases that had plagued the local population for centuries. "The neural regeneration therapy is working," he reported to his colleague, Dr. An Soo-jin. The former slaves are recovering their memories and cognitive functions. Within a year, they should be completely healed. It was miraculous work. The hegemony had used neural suppressors to keep their slaves docile. The human doctors had developed technology that could reverse the damage completely. Similar medical programs were running on dozens of worlds, but the humans shared more than medical knowledge. They provided agricultural technology that ended centuries-old famines. They offered educational programs that lifted entire civilizations out of ignorance. They gave freely of their knowledge and resources, asking nothing in return except that other species treat each other with dignity, intelligence. Director Nam So-young monitored the galaxy from a facility that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Her agents were everywhere, watching for signs of aggression or oppression. The network they had built made it impossible for any species to plan large-scale violence without human knowledge. Status report, she requested from her senior analyst. Agent Park Hyun-woo. All quiet across the monitored sectors, he replied. The Zephyrian Empire has abandoned their plans to invade the Crystal Worlds. The Blood Pirates have disbanded their fleet. The Merchant Syndicate has stopped using slave labor in their factories. It was remarkable how quickly the galaxy had adapted to human oversight. Most species had realized that cooperation was far more beneficial than conflict. Those few who still harbored aggressive intentions found their plans frustrated at every turn. The transformation was not just military or political. It was cultural. Species that had been enemies for millennia were learning to work together under human guidance. Trade flourished as shipping lanes became safe. Art and science advanced as resources were diverted from warfare to creativity. On Earth, Captain Lee Tae-min, now promoted to Commodore, walked through the gardens of New Seoul Spaceport. The facility was a marvel of human and alien engineering combined. Ships from across the galaxy came here to trade, to learn, and to seek human guidance. His wife, Commander Park So-young, joined him as they watched alien children playing with human children in the gardens. It was a sight that would have been impossible a year ago. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked him. "The way things changed, the way we changed." Lee Tae-min considered the question. The awakening had transformed every human in ways both wonderful and terrible. They had gained power beyond imagination, but they had also gained responsibility for the entire galaxy. "No," he said finally. "We didn't choose this, but we've made the best of it. The galaxy is safer now. Children from 100 worlds can play together without fear. That's worth the burden we carry?" The burden was real. Humans now lived with the knowledge that they were the galaxy's guardians. They could never again retreat to their single world and ignore the suffering of others. They had become something larger than themselves, something that transcended individual nations or planets. But they had also gained something precious: unity. The attacks on their colonies had united humanity in a way nothing else could have. Old divisions of nation, race, and ideology had vanished in the face of external threat. Humans now thought of themselves as one people with one purpose: to protect all life in the galaxy. The story's final scene took place in a classroom on Nexus Prime. Human teacher Kim Ji-hoon was telling a group of young aliens about the history of their galaxy. His students included crystal beings, plant-like creatures, and energy forms that existed as pure thought. "Long ago," he said, "there was a species called the Architects. They were powerful and wise, but they were also dangerous. They chose to exile themselves to protect others from their own nature." A young Altarian raised a crystalline appendage. "What happened to them, Teacher Kim?" Kim Ji-hoon smiled. "They became something better. They learned that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to protect. They became the guardians of the galaxy, watching over all life and ensuring that no innocent being would ever suffer needlessly. "Are they still here?" asked a small plant being from the verdant worlds. "Oh yes," Kum Ji-hoon replied, looking out the window at the human ships that patrolled the space around Nexus Prime. "They're still here. They're called humans now, and they're our friends." The alien children seemed satisfied with this answer. To them, humans were not terrifying warriors or ancient destroyers. They were protectors, teachers, and healers. The older generation might remember the fear that had gripped the galaxy during the awakening, but these young beings would grow up in a safer, kinder universe. As the lesson ended and the alien children returned to their families, Kim Ji-hoon reflected on how much had changed. The humans had not sought to rule the galaxy. They had not wanted to become its guardians. But when faced with a choice between isolation and responsibility, they had chosen responsibility. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. There were still challenges to face, problems to solve, and injustices to correct. But for the first time, in 10,000 years, every sentient being could sleep peacefully, knowing that somewhere among the stars, the descendants of the architects stood watch. The oldest rule in the galaxy had been broken, and in breaking it, the galaxy had been remade. The humans had awakened not as conquerors, but as protectors. They had remembered not just their power, but their purpose. And in the end, that made all the difference. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds under 1,000,000 stars, children played. In safety, while their parents worked in peace. Trade ships traveled secure routes. Scientists shared knowledge freely. Artists created beauty without fear. The humans had kept their promise. They had built something better from the ashes of the old order. And as long as stars burned in the darkness, they would continue to stand guard, ensuring that the light of civilization would never be extinguished by the forces of chaos and cruelty. The descendants of the architects had come home at last. Not as rulers, but as the galaxy's eternal guardians watching over all life.